Hello, dear students. This is Susma Singh, and today I'm back to help you comprehend yet another wonderful poem from Flamingo book of Standard 12 CBSE. The name of this thought provoking as well as life changing poem is Keeping Quiet, composed by a brilliant poet, Pablo Neruda, who is recognized as one of the greatest poets of 20th century. Before moving on to the comprehensive study of this reflective poem, let me tell you first that the awakening which the poet has reflected through this poem is the only vital need of the hour because it reminds us how powerful is silence, that is, introspective quietness. Keeping quiet not only is a lyrical reminder but also a plea to break the momentum of busyness and to do self reflection. Each and every word of this reflective poem is flooded with meaning. So, in this module, for all inclusive study of the poem, I shall talk about its theme, the tone and the style of the poem, line by line explanation, and the literary devices used in this poem. Even we shall be doing the comprehension check at the end. First and foremost, let me give you the overview of this splendid poem. As a matter of fact, keeping quiet dwells on a quality which seems to have lost in the buzz of 21st century. That is the quality of silence. The world in which we are living is on the verge of destruction because the earth has become an ailing planet as in our own greed we are destroying its resources. Not only this, we humans have become self-centered that we are killing our fellow brothers. We are indulged in all kinds of war which have just created sufferings and troubles. Therefore, before it is too late, let us finally suspend all mindless activities and keep quiet to introspect ourselves. This reflective looking inward will only help us from many harmful and violent activities. Before we proceed further, let's take a look at the theme of this profound poem. Necessity of quiet introspection, along with creating mutual understanding among humans, is the crux around which keeping quiet revolves. Adopting silence and stillness in our life is very essential because it will help us reflect on ourselves and the world. It is only through introspection and reflection that we can attain the perfect utopian world we desire for. These silent moments are going to break the sadness, break the miseries of rat race, the agony of mental and physical pain, which are slowly drawing us close to death. Anti-violence is also one of the major themes of the poem, as it has described war as meaningless. And sub-theme of this poem is ecological conservation. The overall tone of the poem is a very logical, pressing, and reflective one because the poet is making a rather serious plea to the people of this world. And this poem is written in blank verse because it is free from rhyme scheme but does have a consistent meter. Now, let's find out what the opening line of this poem reveals. Here we find that the poet employs the collective we to begin the exercise of keeping quiet. This reflects that the heart of the poem is inclusiveness. The poet, through the expression count to 12, wants to suggest that even this short span of time will enable us to calm ourselves down by suspending all our mindless activities and unwanted activities and be ready to plunge into the state of silence and do soul searching. Students, here you note down that the number 12 signifies the 12 hours on the face of clock from which the two hands circle in a monotonous manner, very much like the daily activities of our lives. The expression on the face of the earth refers to the various countries on the surface of the earth. People across the nation have to unite together so that they can save the world and know or realize the sole purpose of human life. The poet intends to dissolve the linguistic barriers created by humans because language, instead of acting only as a medium of communication, is creating barriers of caste, creed, and religion. So the poet wants people to prohibit them from speaking in words, but to communicate for at least a while through their hearts. This will help us to be united in a moment of silence. And using pun, the poet here implies that men have moved their arms, that is, in the first case, you can say hands, so to show the gesture of restlessness or aggression, as well as they have used arms, that is, the use of weapons, which the modern world is obsessed with. Hence, the poet urges us to be still and not to move arms so much. According to the poet, unnecessary rush or engines has made our living mechanical and unpleasant because in today's competitive world there is a rat race to outshine others. When everything will come to a standstill with reduced industrial activities and people will not participate in any rat race for material advancement or progress, then that moment of silence will not only be an extraordinary but also an exotic moment. It will also be a sudden and strange one because silence has become rare in this modern world and we are not used to this. However, this strikingly remarkable moment of silence is one powerful way that will make us blissful by fostering togetherness, courage, love, and harmony. Lines 11 to 14 actually highlight the subtheme of this poem, that is, ecological protection. Because the poet is against any kind of exploitation. He calls upon the fishermen who harm aquatic lives of the polar region not to harm fish and whales for livelihood. The poet wants them to cease their hunt and identify their mistakes as well as rectify themselves. In this brief moment of silence and reflection, realization will dawn upon them and they will understand the true motto of life, that is to live and let live. The poet is also against any kind of self destructive activities which are meant to earn livelihood or for a profit. He asks the men who gather salt from the sea to realize that nature retaliates by turning their hands rough. By keeping quiet, they will be able to pay attention to their pain they have been causing to themselves and take care of their hand. So we can see that the poet here wants environmental protection by stopping man's cruel activities. These lines highlight the devastating consequences of wars, and the poet condemns those people, that is, the politicians, the statesmen, and the scientists who are involved in initiating and aggravating wars. He says that man's activities are polluting the nature, and people who fight using nuclear and chemical weapons usually end up in ashes. That is, these weapons have brought mankind to its dead end. They may become victorious, but with no survivors left to celebrate this victory. The poet realizes that wars are always futile, so he mocks at the victory of those people who get victory over destruction. He urges them to put on new clothes, that is, to clean the soul, heart, and mind, to reflect inwardly, and thus halt their destructive activities. If man will walk with his enemies like they are his brothers, he will realize the strength of humanity and become conscious of universal brotherhood. This can provide a healing touch to mankind. Here, the poet urges us not to mistake inactivity advocated by him for total inactivity, because total inactivity means physical and spiritual death. Total inactivity would mean not doing anything at all or total indifference and ignorance. But the poet wants us to be still, to think and reflect so that we can halt hostile and harmful activities. The absence of stress and tension caused by unnecessary hustle and bustle of life would make the life moment blissful, as all inhuman and destructive activities will be stopped. Thus, we can say that stillness is positive while inactivity is negative. The poet says that life is an ongoing process and it has to move on. So he wants no association with death. Without activity, there can be no life. And so he does not want people to become passive, and he is not in favor of death like silence, rather favors an optimistic approach towards life. Each and every word from lines 27 to 33 is very powerful. Generally, we are so single minded about moving ahead in life that we are intensely caught up in the web of rush and activities to the extent of not understanding ourselves. These mindless activities seem like progress, but actually, these activities lead to destruction because we do not pay heed to neither to the pros and cons of reckless progress nor to self or others. Our inability to keep quiet results in our failure to understand ourselves and others. If people slow down and ponder about themselves, a huge silence might interrupt the sadness of being too busy to recognize the emotional self. This sadness is of not understanding oneself. The sadness is about not understanding the futility of madras, the futility of harming animals, and the futility of fighting mad wars. We are endlessly threatening ourselves with death. The monotonous rush of life makes individual threaten oneself with death and fear that one might not be able to accomplish one's tasks of survival. Thus, the silence which results from keeping quiet isn't only an exotic one, but also a soothing silence that can heal the self inflicted wounds of humanity. These concluding lines highlight how powerful is introspective quietness. So, the poet suggests us to take a teaching from nature because it teaches us the importance of keeping quiet and preserving life. The earth appears to be inactive, yet it is constantly and selflessly productive. As the earth, which at one season may look as if dead, but comes back with life in another season. So, period of quietness is always productive and constructive. The earth goes through cycles of life and death, and this is done without any hustle and commotion. Life blossoms even under apparent silence. After the cold, inactive, and unproductive winter, spring arrives with bounty and vivacity. Likewise, taking a pause and introspecting into our lives will give a new meaning. we will be able to understand the true purpose of life. It will be like a rebirth of the soul because it will bring back a degree of nobility, thoughtful attitudes, and universal brother. And towards the end, the poet means that keeping quiet will make us free from our hectic activities, and we will know the difference between mindless movement or activities and meaningful living. He says that he himself will depart quietly so that we can introspect and appreciate or cherish this moment of silence. In this line, students, you will get all the poetic devices that have been used in this poem with examples. You can simply note them down and revise. You can see that alliteration, repetition, symbolism, pun, metaphor, and other various poetic devices are used to lend deeper meaning to this excellent poem. Hope you all must have got the in-depth explanation of this poem. So here are a few important questions from the poem for your comprehension check. Taking help from the explanation which I had just given to you, try to solve them and deepen your understanding. Keep watching to get the detailed analysis of other chapters too. Thank you.